Cunningham. I'm one of the co-founders for the Afro-Socialist and Socialist Color Caucus of the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America. We're so happy to have you all with us tonight for this very important forum. Before we start, I'll just say a little bit about AfroSoc, or Afro-Socialists. We are a caucus of Black, Indigenous, people of color, Latinx folks of the DSA, and more broadly, our goal is to create a network, both locally and nationally, of Black and Brown people who ascribe to radical politics and who want to organize around those politics. And so we do things like political education events, forums like these, as well as organizing within our own communities to spread the message of socialism and to help people fight against their oppression. We're so honored to be joined by the candidates for the District 36 City Council race tonight. First off, we have in our 7 o'clock spot, Joyner Jr. We have Paul Hippolyte standing in for the candidate Tahirah Moore, who, thank you, Paul, who couldn't be with us tonight because she experienced a death in the family due to complications through COVID, and our hearts and prayers are with her through this difficult time. We were supposed to be joined by Regina Edwards, and so if she is able to join us at 7 or anytime as well, we'll get her in there. If not, we'll extend the 8 o'clock invitation to her to join both Ossé as well as Jason Walker. I want to introduce our moderator. We have the fierce and fabulous Chivona Newsome, co-founder of Black Lives Matter Greater New York. Chivona is a leader in the streets. She is a former congressional candidate for District 15. She's a powerhouse, and more than anything, she's about the liberation of our people. And so we're so honored to have you with us tonight, Chivona. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Bianca. Thank you to everyone at AfroSoc for always standing in partnership with BLM. And I support the great work you do on the ground. This is to the candidates. Please be open, as honest as possible. My experience with DSA and AfroSoc, they can see right through it. So I want to go off of reading the rules, and I'm excited to hear everyone's platform who is joining this call. Candidates, you'll each have 2 minutes to introduce yourselves. I'll ask the following questions, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. If a candidate's name is invoked, you have 1.5 minutes to respond. Questions will be asked in an alternating order. Candidates will have 1 minute each for a closing statement. Is everyone cool with the rules? We all got it? Okay, let's jump right into it. I'm excited about these topics we're going to be covering. They're very important for full Black liberation. The first question is going to be, we're going to go to Paul because Regina has not joined us yet. Paul, by how much would you support cutting the NYPD's budget? 1 billion, 2 billion? And how have you organized around this issue?
Yeah, so I know that, and again, I'm going to not speak for myself, but I'm going to try to speak for the candidate. Because personally, I've done a lot of work around this issue, but I think her goal is in addition to cutting from the police budget, it's not just about, it's really about reallocating those resources and not just cutting, I guess, from the budget, even though we're in a budget crunch right now. But one of the things that she worked on for years, actually, and it's obviously it's not just her, it was a community effort, but it was getting the and the Marcy houses. There was in the middle of COVID-19 and in the middle of the pandemic, when the state decided that they were not going to approve any projects, even if they were already funded, unless they were somehow related to the pandemic. Through her effort and her advocacy, Tahirah was able to get a community center in Marcy houses. The first time we've had a community center in NYCHA in over 20 years after NYCHA said that they were out of the social services business. But what she ended up advocating for, along with a lot of community advocates, was getting the police station out of the Marcy houses and instead getting a community center in where people have been having food drives. They've set up testing. It's just been a one-stop shop, and it's just case in point of what you can do when you have an effective advocate that not only it sees the issue of the reallocation of resources, but has the skills and the wherewithal and the drive to actually get it done, even in the middle of the pandemic.
Thank you. And just for clarity, Paul will be answering for Tahirah, Ms. Moore, and I'll be addressing the questions as if I were speaking to her. And we got a little excited. I was actually really excited about defunding the police, but I think it's important that we have opening statements. I think the people watching this and the people who are going to make the endorsement need to hear this. So John, if you'd like to jump in with the opening statement first, because we just heard from Tahirah.
Okay, great. Absolutely. Okay, so thank you. Thank you for an opportunity to interview for your support. This interview and endorsement process means a lot to me because Afro Socialist and I fight and have fought for the same principles and people. In 2015, I founded Black Unification Global Organization, a pro-Black global unification organization which aims to get Blacks civically engaged globally by focusing on strategic advocacy to agitate and stimulate Blacks socially, economically, and civil rights and equal rights. My organization and other organizations like Socialist Alternative NYC, the Campaign to Shut Down Rikers, and the Trinity Lutheran Church came together to protest the death of Mike Brown. For the past 11 years, since the age of 18, I have served in my community as an activist, working to economically, socially empower and bring forth equality for Black and Brown people in my community. I want to be city council member to develop legislation to protect and enhance lives legislatively. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Tahirah, I know you just answered the first question, and John, I'll get back to you on that question, but we had skipped over the opening statement. So, Tahirah?
Thank you again for inviting me here today. Affordable housing is a real issue here in this 36th district. Tahirah Moore is running for city council because families like hers who have been here for generations are being priced out. And she knows that this will force families in Bed Stuy and Crown Heights into unstable housing situations. As a teen, Tahirah was in that situation, and it was the residents of the 36th district and this community who made sure that she had a place to sleep. She understands how important housing is to the safety and well-being of this community, and as the next council member, will work to ensure that all low to moderate income families have access to high quality housing, because no one should experience unstable housing like she did. And that's why she's running on her record and excited to represent the residents of this district. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Joyner, I'm not sure if you remember the last question because it was so long ago. To refresh everyone's memory, by how much would you support cutting the NYPD's budget? 1 billion, 3 billion, and how have you organized around this issue?
Okay, yes, thank you. Well, this is an important question, very important question. You know, a lot of people want to defund the police. I think we need to defund the police for the right reasons, and the money should go to the right reasons, like housing, because housing is a foundation. I believe housing is a foundation to anything that we want to accomplish in life. And so more money needs to go to things like housing and young adult and youth programs and social developmental programs. But I would say cutting the police by 2 billion, you know, is a great number. And that money, $1 billion of that should go directly towards NYCHA, towards housing. So yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joyner. Question number 2. This one's going to be for Tahirah. Do you oppose the borough-based jail plan, and will you support the immediate closure of Rikers Island without new jails?
So I believe this conversation's and that question's a little bit more complicated because if I'm not mistaken, the law says that it's in the New York State law that the jails we can't just close down all the jails. I guess is what I'm trying to say. I believe it's in New York State law. The candidate and also myself, we both believe that we need to be moving towards a space of ending mass incarceration. We want to work towards a world where we are instituting restorative justice practices. And the Rikers jail is just rife with problems. And this has been decades in the making, and this is not a new problem. And so shutting down Rikers is a specific problem that can and should be done. But I think just the conversation in general, when you broaden it out, we also need to pressure our state electeds. I know in this district, for example, State Senator Jabari Parker was supported thanks to the work of DSA. Was helped to get he was elected to the state Senate, and with partners like Jabari in there, we need to work towards a more permanent solution and changing the law so that way we can move to a society where we can close all of these jails.
Mr. Joyner, I'll repeat the question for you. Do you oppose the borough-based jails plan, and will you support the immediate closure of Rikers Island without new jails?
I do support local borough-based jails or facilities because I want inmates to be closer at home. I believe they're already in jail, and so they should at least be closer to family, so that family can visit them and they can be closer to resources. So I agree with localizing jails in each borough. And I'm sorry, second question?
Oh, the second part of that question was regarding Rikers Island. I will finish it for you.
Yes.
That says, will you support the immediate closure of Rikers Island without new jails?
No. I will not support the immediate closure of Rikers Island without any type of jails into place for inmates to go to. We have rapists, they're killers, so there are people who commit very serious crimes that, don't need to walk the streets at this point. So we have to think about that also. Thank you.
Okay. Tahirah, moving on to question number 3. Should public schools have police officers, sometimes called school safety officers?
No. So as part of our move away from mass incarceration, and again, this is not a new problem. This has been going on for decades. And we've just keep increasing the policing of our students and our young folks. And this has to end. And so, and I'm going to, again, speak in part on the work that I've done and the work I know that Tahirah has done. But I've worked for years on trying to get in school resource officers, which they're called in a lot of places, to get them out of schools. I mean, we see news stories almost every year of kids that are 7, that are 8, that are 10 years old being taken out of schools in handcuffs for not sitting down, for getting into a verbal altercation. I mean, it is beyond, it is out of control. And the truth is that we need folks that are in schools that have the relationships, that can build relationships, that know how to deal with our students, that know how to deal with our community. The last thing we need is to bring in police officers from outside and if you look at any school that is functioning well, none of them will have these police officers in schools. And it's another way that we have increased the policing of our Black and brown communities, and it has to end.
Thank you. Moving along. And this one is for Mr. Joyner. Mr. Joyner, do you support the expansion of charter schools?
Yes, I do. I support any type of educational institution that's willing to take our children to the next level. So that's in charter schools or NYC public schools. So no school, we shouldn't deny any school. So yes, I agree.
Tahirah, would you like me to reread the question or?
No, I can jump right in. So charter schools are a part of a over 40-year privatization of our public schools. And it's not just with our schools. It's happened in all different parts of the public sector that have been privatized over the last 2 or 3 generations. And that's not to say that I have any issue with parents that choose that option because whatever school that is in that area, for example, may have police officers in the school, and they may say, no, this charter school doesn't have that. This charter school does not. They have a different level of treating behaviors, and some do. Whereas you have other charter schools that have very aggressive tactics towards students with disabilities or students with behavioral issues. But just in general, I think it's a larger movement of privatization of our public sector that we need to be really mindful of. And so, no, I'm not in favor of the expansion of charter schools.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for that answer. Mr. Joyner, question number 5. Do you support the SHSAT, school screenings, gifted and talented programs?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. I know some parents and have some issues, like they don't think that they work, for their children enough. And so I think we need to take a look at how they're operating, how we can make them better, how we can improve, put more money into the programs, more investment into our young people. So I don't think we need to ditch programs sometimes. I think we need to put more money into them, more investment, more time. So yes, thank you.
Same question.
Hi, Tahirah. How are you? So the following question is going to be, will you support a primary challenger to Andrew Cuomo from the left?
Honestly, I don't know her response, but what I will say personally is that the governor has often ruled the state with an iron fist, and I think has sought numerous ways to undermine the leftist, the progressive movement in the state. Case in point would be his support of the IDC for years. The governor supported these folks that were teaming up with the Republicans to really thwart all kinds of progressive legislation because it was to his benefit. And that needs to end. And we need a governor that's progressive. We need a governor that's going to stand up for working families. We need a governor that's going to tax the rich, that's going to cancel rent. It's going to do all of these. Honestly, it's hard to probably find an issue that we can talk about that we'd be on the same side. And when it comes to mass incarceration, he has not stepped up to the plate. Just look at his version of legalization of cannabis. The CRTA is just, it's garbage. Let's just be honest. It's a giveaway to his rich friends, and this has to end. And so I think that the governor really we need a progressive governor in New York State.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Following question. I'm sorry, John, I don't believe I asked you that question. My apologies. Do you support a primary challenger to Andrew Cuomo from the left?
I'm not sure. I don't think that, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay. The following question for Tahirah is going to be, would you accept an all expense paid trip to Israel as an elected official?
Not knowing, again, her position on this one, I'm chuckling, not because it's funny, but because so many times elected officials get into these positions and they forget who they are and why they got there in the first place. And the job becomes about the pomp and circumstance. It becomes about these trips abroad from special interest groups, from whoever it may be. And my guess is that there are the vast majority of residents who live in the 36th district probably have never even left New York City. And if it's a trip abroad, an educational trip to learn, I would love to sponsor some of the residents in the district to go abroad. But to use my position to do that, I would probably support doing it on my own dime if I wanted to do it. But my guess is that also if that trip was happening, it would be probably sponsored and paid for by groups that are looking for favors and support. And I don't think that's the right way to use your office.
Thank you. Mr. Joyner, do you oppose the privatization of NYCHA via RAD?
Oh, no, I do not support the privatization of NYCHA. No, I do not support privatization of NYCHA. You know, there's no especially. I don't support that. You know, but and especially when we're going through so many things now, people are struggling for housing. You know, and they want to take more housing from NYCHA, from low-income individuals and families. No, it's not right. So no, I don't support that.
Ms. Moore, I pose the same question to you.
Yeah, similar to my answer around charter schools, this is a long trend that's been going on really in our democratic cities, because so many supposed progressive and leftists are always being bought off, or they see the new shiny object and they're chasing it. And the truth is that we need to protect the public sector, and this privatization of our public goods really has to stop. So absolutely not today, not tomorrow, not ever. I know that Tahirah Moore was born and grew up in NYCHA housing, has a lot of family that are still in NYCHA housing. And the goal is to have housing that where people can live and live with dignity and respect, housing that is livable, and housing that meets the needs of the district.
Thank you. The following question, Mr. Joyner. Did you oppose Amazon coming to Queens? How about the Industry City rezoning or the Flushing rezoning? What did you do when these events happened?
Okay, it's interesting. Well, Amazon. So I opposed Amazon coming. I opposed Amazon coming because, you know, there wasn't enough. We didn't know enough, you know, and sometimes we get taken advantage of. And, you know, we didn't want to get taken advantage of by such a big company like Amazon. And it destroyed our local companies, our local businesses, our mom and pops, our small businesses, because New York City is nothing but small businesses, 90% small businesses. And so I opposed, and I still do oppose Amazon coming into New York City for that contingency under small-based businesses in our communities.
And there was also, the question also included Industry City rezoning and the Flushing rezoning.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the industry, I'm not sure what that was, what those were. Sorry.
Okay. Ms. Moore, now we'll go to you. Did you oppose Amazon coming to Queens, the Industry City rezoning, and the Flushing rezoning? What positions did you take on those?
Yeah, and so just to be clear, this is an open seat, and so no one that's running, I believe, was in office at the time. And so
I think it goes from a personal standpoint.
Oh, yes.
Even
yes,
if you are a first time, because there were people who weren't running from office who took a position either way.
Correct. I guess my only point in saying that was just to say it's easier to have a position when you're not in the arena. But what I will say is that this is the worst of corporate welfare. The wealthiest company that the world has ever seen, owned by the wealthiest person that the world has ever seen, getting billions of dollars in tax subsidies to move to New York City when they were going to move anyway. It is abhorrent. This kind of corporate welfare is really what I think one of the worst parts of the modern Democratic Party that has allowed this to happen, especially in a city like New York City, when we have so many needs. And if we're going to be giving tax breaks, if we're going to be taxing the rich, like what we should be doing is we should be finding ways to cancel rent. We should be finding ways to make sure that everyone has a job. We should find ways to get guaranteed basic income. There's so many needs we have, and giving tax subsidies to the wealthiest company is just that can't happen in the city anymore. And even when it comes to the other rezoning projects, and this is just a larger picture that we have to dissect, but I think that the developers have had such a large role in influencing these decisions and influencing the zonings and influence of all of these capital projects that are happening across the city. And what I have done, what Tahirah has done throughout her career, is to help engage and inspire residents in her community to be more involved and to take back what's in their city, which is partially why she's missed out on a number of endorsements, because she's refused to join the pay to play. She's refused to offer and suggest to others that they will get perks and benefits if she's elected. And a number of the folks that are running the party, that are in charge, decided not to endorse her because of that. But she's proud of her stance on that. And when she's elected, she'll be representing the residents of the 36th district and not the developers.
Thank you. The next question, and I'm noticing with the questions that are multiple, they're multifaceted. I may jump in after you stop speaking just so we can really have clarity for this endorsement. Okay, guys? Mr. Joyner,
Yes.
Do you support the full decriminalization of sex work, fare evasion, and drug possession? Now, I'm going to listen to your answer, and if I don't hear all of those parts covered, I'll just jump back in to re-ask the question.
Okay, so just repeat the question one more time. I got the first part.
The first part is, do you support the full decriminalization of sex work, fare evasion, and drug possession? Now, keep in mind when you're answering these questions, if you are opposed or against something, please give the why. Please let us know why you are opposed or for something.
Okay, so let's start with sex work, decriminalizing sex work. I mean, it's a tough one. I mean, you know, because it's a tough one because we have to look at who we're criminalizing. Are we criminalizing the people who are putting people in these situations to have to sell their bodies? You know, what happens if we decriminalize and people start taking advantage of people? And then we have a situation where there's pimps, you know, who are just, you know, kidnapping people and just hustling people for money. You know, so I think there's a lot of things we need to think about. It's not that easy to just say, should we legalize, you know, should we legalize this? It's not that easy. It's very hard. So I'm going to bypass that first question. We can go to the second and the third one. And so what was the second and the third?
And I just want to make sure we're clear, because I know you said you were skipping and moving on. So you do support decriminalizing sex work, or you don't?
I didn't give an answer. I'm not making an answer on do I support decriminalizing sex work, because who are we criminalizing? The people. What if, you know, I don't know enough information, so I'm not saying yes or no yet. No.
Okay.
I've been put in situations where I got my person. I was sold. You understand? My body was sold. You understand? So we have to start thinking about things. We're really thinking about things before we do them, and we start, you know. So I want to bypass the first question about decriminalizing, you know, that, and we can go to the second and the third thing that you asked.
No problem. And we respect your decision not to answer that question. The second part of that is fare evasion and drug possession.
Drug possession, such as marijuana, of course, you know, that should have been taken off the books. You know, that law should have been stricken. A lot of politicians had, you know, claimed they'll do certain things when they're elected. It never happens. We see that with a lot of in our Black equality rights movements, you know. But so yes, I do support decriminalizing marijuana and certain other drugs.
Okay. And lastly is fare evasion. How do you feel about that?
Fare evasion. Okay, yeah, I've actually hopped the fare a couple, you know, before. I've gotten stopped by the police for hopping the fare. At times when I didn't have any money. That was about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, you know, and I was about to be, you know, start my candidacy for city council member. And I was homeless, you know. I had to hop on a train, hop the turnstile to get to my next, you know, location. And so I think it does need to be decriminalized. The people who hop the turnstile doesn't mean they're bad people. You know, it just means that they're trying to survive and they need to go home. So yes.
Thank you, Mr. Joyner. Ms. Moore, do you support the full decriminalization of sex work, fare evasion, or drug possession?
So I think these all three fall into a category broadly of victimless crimes, and the answer is yes to decriminalizing all of these, and being respectful of where people stand on these issues. When you criminalize the sex work, what you really do is you're criminalizing the workers, and I think there's a way to bring these industries that are below ground, above board, and we can have healthcare workers that have access to them. This is one of the areas and one of the industries that are rife with reviews from law enforcement officers. When you make someone's work illegal, then who do they turn to? That's often why you have pimps, why you have other criminal activity that we do want to prohibit that is connected to sex work. Because let's just say someone is assaulted as a sex worker, you can't just go to law enforcement and get that taken care of as easily. And so this is just and not to mention that, and to mention that so often this kind of work that is dominated by women identifying peoples, female identifying people that are also often dehumanized. And I just think that this is an industry that needs to be regulated, that needs to have, we need to bring it above board. Same thing with, I mean, fare evasion is different. It's not an industry, but yes, that's both that and drugs should not be criminalized. People are going to use drugs. People have used drugs for as long as we have recorded history. And I'll add to that the folks that use drugs at the highest rates are often your middle class and wealthy folks because they have the money to do it. So there's a stigma that it's poor folks that are using drugs at a higher rate, and that's just not borne out by the facts. They're the people that are stopped. They're the people that are arrested. They're the people that are targeted. And it's often our Black and brown communities, again, that are targeted for these crimes. But they're not the ones that are using it at the highest rates. They're not the ones bringing it into the community. They're not the ones making tons of money off of it. But they're the ones that suffer the brunt of the law when it comes to it. And so these things have to be treated differently. If folks are addicts, there needs to be treatment centers. We're long overdue. And this is also part of the longer trend of mass incarceration and criminalization of our Black and brown communities that needs to end. So absolutely opposed to, or in support of decriminalizing all three. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is the last question before we get into questions for the community. And I'm excited to actually read you guys the questions from the residents. They're pretty awesome. So the final question for this round is, do you support cannabis? What actions do you take to ensure cannabis justice? And that's going to be for Mr. Joyner.
Okay, yes. I support cannabis. I support decriminalizing and, removing past criminal acts that were put on people's records. So yeah, and I believe that there's room for Black and brown people to get into the cannabis businesses. So yeah, I support.
Thank you. And Ms. Moore?
So Assemblywoman Crystal Peoples-Stokes and Senator Liz Krueger sponsored a bill. It's the acronym is the MRTA. It's the Marijuana Regulation Tax law, but it can go further. But I will say that not only am I in support of it, but as I was saying earlier, the governor has a version that really is just a kickback to his friends that's going to, it's going to be, if implemented, it would be one of the worst cannabis laws, legalization laws in the entire country, whereas the MRTA would be one of the best. And so a couple of things that it does. One is that it doesn't allow for vertical integration, which means that you can't have one company that does everything from growing to selling to the dispensaries to marketing, everything. And so New York loves the New York government loves their big businesses, and selling these licenses for tons of money, where only the wealthiest folks in the country could have access to these licenses. And that's what the governor's plan would have been doing. And actually, one of the reasons why it has not been legalized yet in the state is because the state legislature, really led by the majority leader, Black woman Assemblymember Crystal Peoples-Stokes, has really been fighting those folks who are trying to implement really what would be a terrible law. And so the MRTA does not have vertical integration. And so you can have smaller mom and pop shops that can get into the game. Obviously, when a license costs $1 million, $1.5 million, it's going to be right. Again, just it opens the door for all corruption and obviously just the big players that can get in the game. The other thing that the MRTA does, and so again, it's not just about legalizing cannabis, but it's like after that happens, like what rules are in place. Once the industry becomes legalized, it's going to be much harder to change the laws. And so one of the things that MRTA does is make sure that communities that have been ravaged by the war on drugs are the ones that are going to benefit from the taxes that, I mean, this is still 4 or 5 years out, but from the taxes that would be gained from the state from legalization, it would prioritize communities that were really targeted by the war on drugs. But also the goal is to try to help communities that have been targeted to get easier access into the industry, to help them with licensing, to help folks who with apprenticeship programs. I mean, just all down the list. It's a much better version. And I think if that version gets implemented, we will have, again, one of the most progressive cannabis legalization laws in the entire country. And so if folks don't know about it, I would really encourage you to look up the MRTA versus the CRTA, and call your local representatives and advocate for what makes sense. And we need to keep our legislators' feet to the fire to make sure that they're prioritizing justice and not just legalizing cannabis.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. And now this is the exciting part. These are all questions from residents of District 36. These are the people that you are fighting to represent, to pass laws, to help. This is the motivation as to why that you're running. So, Mr. Joyner, we're going to start with you. This is a question from a resident of District 36. What will you do to support the tenants' rights movement in District 36? And do you support the cancellation of rent?
I do support the cancellation of rent, and I would support tenant movements and other housing movements and all of our movements within our district, first of all, by organizing and talking with us, organizing and having town halls. But I would like to say that I developed something I call the Equal Living Cost Rights Law that calls for a mandated 50-50% split in private and affordable housing. So we're asking for 50% unit percentage within these residential developments that they're building, the new ones. And so I developed, it's called an Equal Living Cost Rights Law. So we need to start looking at developing laws like that, and also supporting other laws such as that, other legislation, and developing local legislation to protect us in our district. So yes, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Moore, same question. What will you do to support the tenants' right movement in District 36? And do you support the cancellation of rent?
Yes, we need to cancel rent. Was that me?
Yeah, that's you.
No, sorry, there was a really bad feedback all of a sudden. Now I get thrown off, but yes, fully support canceling rent. And so many countries really across the world have stepped up and have provided their residents protections during this pandemic, and one of the toughest economic times that we faced, probably since the Great Recession back in 2008. And it's abominable that you have these private companies. The wealthy have made more in the last year and a half. I mean, their profits are just skyrocketing, but we have folks that are struggling, that are being kicked out of their houses in other parts of the country. And this shouldn't be happening. And I'll take it a step further, that the state representatives are often, including the governor, are putting this on the federal government. Before it was Trump, now it's going to be Biden. They're putting it at their feet as to why this isn't happening. And the truth is that the state budget, I believe last year, was about $173 billion. I mean, New York is one of the wealthiest places in the entire world. We have enough billionaires. We have enough millionaires. And we can have a reasonable housing policy. We can cancel rent. We can have more affordable housing. It just takes political will and leadership that really takes this issue seriously, and also realize that the folks that are being most harmfully, that are getting the brunt of the impact from this pandemic and from the tough economic times are the same communities that are struggling during COVID, that have the highest rates of death, that have the highest rates of hospitalization, and are the same communities that have been left out of the economic progress that this country has seen, and they deserve the government to step in this time of need and cancel rent and make sure that we have secure housing and affordable housing, even post the pandemic.
Thank you. Mr. Joyner, you'll be getting our next question, and that is, how will you bring new housing supply to our district that is truly affordable for working people, not just for a minuscule giveaway from a mega profitable developer?
Yes, absolutely. Well, again, my thing is family and housing. These are the most critical foundations in our community. Housing is the foundation to anything that we want to go forth and branch off into life. Without housing, we can't succeed in anything. We're going to fail because we don't have stability. We don't have a reliable, affordable home. And so that's why I developed the Equal Living Cost Rights Law, a 50-50 mandated split between affordable and private residential units. So this type of legislation is what's going to create more housing. It's going to lower homelessness throughout the city, and it's going to create more equal opportunities. Equal opportunities because there won't be any more low income and high income class. We can all live together in one building. It's a 50% split. Equal is not only a financial split, but it's an equality split. It's a split in equality. So yeah, the Equal Living Cost Rights Law and other legislation like it that's going to, and also working with an AMI that's suitable for our district, that's suitable for District 36, because most of our residents cannot afford the rent. I myself have been gentrified out of our district because I couldn't afford the rent, and I'm just about to go back into our district. You understand? So that's how serious the situation is. And so, yes, the Equal Living Cost Rights Law. Thank you.
Thank you. No problem. Ms. Moore, would you like to answer that?
Yes, we need affordable housing in this district. And one thing I would encourage the folks that are watching to look up, and this is not a shot at John Joyner at all. But
well, if he perceives it as a shot, he does get a 1.5 minute rebuttal. We haven't used any of those yet. So just to give you a heads up.
I have not looked up his donors, but so many folks that are running for city council, as I was saying earlier in the presentation, really have so many developers that are footing the bill of their run for office, and it's not a surprise. I mean, you'd be surprised how much money is flowing right now. I believe 36 out of the 51 seats, or 35 out of the 51 city council seats are up. Obviously, the mayor's up. You have a number of the borough president seats that are up. And there is money flying all over the city because folks understand that for the next 8 years, it's hard. Incumbents rarely lose. And so for the next 8 years, if they can get on the ground floor of some of these electeds that are coming in, they're going to be able to control the development of the city. They're going to be able to control what the next decade looks like here in New York City. And one of the reasons why Tahirah has not gotten the endorsements that some other folks have gotten is because she's not made these deals. She's decided that she's going to run and represent the residents of this district because we know that housing is the number one issue. It's why I started with it. It's why I've stressed her work with Marcy Houses, her work with getting the police station out and instead putting in the community center. Housing is the core of this district, and our residents are being priced out. They're being pushed out. And no one is fighting for them. Even the folks that sometimes look like us, that say the right things, that talk a good game, at the end of the day are still taking money from folks that only care about bringing in the luxury developments. I mean, even some of these candidate questionnaires that you're filling out, some of these groups, some of these industry groups, some of these interest groups they're not shy about the fact that they want development. They want folks that are going to do their bidding. And it's just a shame that so many people just to get into power and to be in that position are willing to sell out their community. And that's one thing that Tahirah has refused to do. And when she's elected, she'll be working as hard as she can for affordable housing. And that goes with making sure that we're following a decent housing plan. We're sitting down with not only other legislators in the district and the borough, but just really having someone that's focused on this issue that's also not bought off from the start.
Thank you. We have a few minutes left over, so I just want to ask these questions because they're just super beyond important to the people of your district. So, Mr. Joyner, what skill set and strengths are you bringing to represent your district?
Well, I'm bringing an open mind, compassion, love, honesty, integrity, someone that we can rely on as a real leader that really cares about us and that really wants our true best interests at heart. So that's what type of qualities that you have in me as a leader. I'm someone that really cares, that loves you all. That's okay. Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question, Ms. Moore, the same question. What's your skill set and what strengths are you going to bring to represent your district?
I'm going to cheat a little bit here. I'm going to speak of why I'm here for Tahirah tonight. And she just had a death in the family and due to COVID and is not here. But I got involved because I live in this district. And I met Tahirah a while ago through a mutual friend. And she is someone who she loves to say that you need, if you're going to solve the problem, you need folks that are close to the problem who understand it. And she'll talk about how 36 of her friends and family were shot and killed in this district. Gun violence is important to her. She grew up in the Marcy houses, which is why I keep stressing housing affordability, decent housing, which is why I was stressing her work getting the police station out. And it's not just about defunding the police, but it's about reallocating resources to the district and not just taking those resources out. But she is a fighter. She is someone that she loves to say that she's a paradigm shifter, that before people even understood the whole defund the police and reallocation of resources, she was in the fight, having this fight. This is not something that just happened. This has been a fight that's been going on for the last 20 years. She's a fighter. She has grit. And yes, I may be, I've worked in politics for years and I get some of these issues, but she's someone who understands the district. She is someone who is real, who does not take no for an answer. During the middle of a pandemic, when the state said they're not giving any more money to new projects, She fought with the mayor's office and made sure and fought with the state and made sure that they were able to cut the ribbon November 6th, I believe, last year, of that community center in the Marcy houses in the middle of a pandemic, and to get that police station out. And that's the real Tahirah. And I'm so proud to be here representing her today.
Thank you. Next question, Mr. Joyner. Do you support non-citizens voting?
Do I support non-citizens voting? Yes, I do. Absolutely, I do. Because, everyone deserves the opportunity to vote, especially if they feel that they're an American citizen and they've been here, for so long, so they're American citizens. And so they need that opportunity also. So I do support it.
You support non-citizens voting. I gotcha. And Ms. Moore? Do you support non-citizens voting?
Yes, residents should have a say. Residents, they pay taxes. They still have to live under the laws of this land. And to be honest, this is an antiquated system that is long overdue for updating. We need to pass, and this is federally also, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We've seen year after year Republicans really chipping away at some of these core fundamental rights that we have. And it's long past that we push back and not only defend, but push forward. And from a personal standpoint, my parents are both immigrants, and my dad was undocumented for years. And they pay taxes, they follow the laws, they have to still live under the same laws. And I know that there have been talks about even expanding what residents can vote on. Maybe they can vote on the local budget, they can vote on their local elected officials, but absolutely, they deserve, they're humans, they deserve a right to vote, they deserve a right to be part of the political process. And we need to find ways to help them become full voting citizens and participants in the country.
Thank you. And this is going to be our final question before we jump into closing statements. Are you a member of DSA? Do you identify as a democratic socialist? And why or why not? So, Mr. Joyner.
Okay, yes, I'm not a member of DSA because I just found out about you guys. I just found out about you guys, and I've never did any research into, I know what a socialist is, but I'm a Democrat, and I took few years ago, I took some really, really bad criticism about, just being open-minded to certain things. So I would like to say that I love what you guys do. I checked out some type of, you guys were like doing some type of group online, and I saw like the group thing going on, and like people from all over the globe kind of thing going on. This type of thing I envisioned for my Black Unification Global Organization. But I took a lot of time, away from that to focus on becoming city council member so that I could develop legislation to protect us now, rather than all those years I spent advocating. Now I'm trying to become a legislator so that I can help us legislatively. So yeah, I'm just now finding out about you guys, but I like what you guys, seem like you're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Joyner. Ms. Moore.
Cheating again, I don't believe she's a member. She needs to be. I am a member, and I first started working with the Democratic Socialists back doing public banking, working with that actually when I was still upstate, living in upstate New York. But the Democratic Socialists are, and she believes this to her core, they are folks that believe in the redistribution of wealth, that we need to reallocate resources away from over-policing and into our communities, into community building. Democratic Socialists believe in Medicare for all. They believe that no one should go without healthcare, that no one should go without food, and that we should have affordable housing, that we need to end the system of mass incarceration. And for all the folks that are out there, it's easy to get hung up on labels, and for someone to say I'm a socialist or I'm a Democrat or whatever. At the end of the day, the Democratic Socialists are one of the few groups that are really pushing the envelope and pushing forward the conversation of equality and justice. And I'm proud to be a supporter. I'm proud to be a part of this organization, to be part of this group. And we would be so honored to have your support. Thank you.
Okay, I would like for you guys to get into your final statements. Mr. Joyner, why should the people of District 36, why should they vote for you?
Well, the residents of District 36 should vote for me because I'm an individual who has actually been through what they've been through. You know, I've been through the issues. I've been through the homelessness. I've been through the gentrification. I've been through the lack of opportunities, but I fought through and I overcame. And I would like to be city council member to develop legislation to protect us. But, you know, I would be the best city council member because, you know, I'm just relatable with the people. I'm from the people. My first thing that I started doing when I was 18 years old, it was my decision to come in this community and help. It was my decision. I wasn't mandated. Nobody told me I had to do it. I looked online and I found an organization to help out in my community at 18 years old. And I decided to do that to benefit and help the people in my community. And I've been doing that ever since. And so, yeah, you know, I want to fight for us in housing, equality and opportunities, create more opportunities for us in our community. Revitalize our businesses. You know, I see Bedford-Stuyvesant and Crown Heights as a Black business mecca. I envision it as a Black business mecca, and it can be that way. You know, it can be that way, but just vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joyner. Ms. Moore, of your 1 minute closing statement.
Thank you again for having me here today and for allowing me to speak on behalf of Tahirah. For 20 years, we tried to get a community center in Mercy Houses, and NYCHA told us that they were out of the social services business. The city said they didn't have enough money, and the state said that our community wasn't a priority. That was not acceptable to Tahirah, and on November 6, 2020, we opened the Mercy Houses Community Center. We did that. Our efforts, your efforts, spoke our truth to power. Tahirah helped secure $14 million for this project and shifted the paradigm from one of neglect and indifference to one of love and empowerment. And just as she did with the community center and being one of the most fierce advocates for that project and seeing it through, she will do for this community. And again, thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for inviting us here today.
Thank you to the candidates. Thank you for your honest and open answers. Thank you to the residents who wrote in to ask these questions about their future reps. Right now, we're about to get into the next candidates. The next round of people, there are 5 people running for office, and we have Chi and Ossé coming up. Mr. Joyner, Ms. Moore, thank you so much and have an amazing evening. The next person you'll be hearing from is Jamila. Thank you.
Hi, so I am a member of Afro Socialists. And again, thank you everyone who's joining us tonight. Again, this is the second round. We have 2 more candidates discuss these questions with us. So thank you everyone for being here. So I'm just gonna be opening up with talking a little bit about AfroSoc or Afro Socialists of Color Caucus. It is a network for the Black and POC members of Democratic Socialists of America. This org serves both on a national and local levels of DSA as a resource for us to organize beyond our oppressions and achieve the self-determination we have been denied. We needed our own space, so we claimed it in the form of AfroSoc or Afro Socialists or Socialists and Socialists of Color Caucus. So thank you again for being here. I'm going to be keeping time, so For the candidates, if you hear a beeping noise after 2 minutes, that means that your time is up. And yes, I'm handing it back over to Chivona.
Hi, candidates. How are you? I'm going to go over the rules and how it's going to play out. And thank you, Chi and Jason, for taking this time. We were anticipating having Regina Edwards on. Unfortunately, she could not make it. So far, we've been having a very amazing panel with some very honest answers. And we're looking to see who's going to be the next rep of District 13. So the rules are candidates. Candidates will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. I will ask the question, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. If a candidate's name is invoked, they will have 1.5 minutes to respond. Questions will be asked in alternating orders. Candidates will have 1 minute each for closing statements. And just to be clear, the 2 candidates that we'll be speaking to tonight are Ossé and Jason Walker. Che, I always mess it up. Is it Che or Chi? And I love you.
Ossé. Think of the national anthem, Ossé, Can You Chi?
Okay, you just made that way harder, but I appreciate you. And say it one more time. It's Che.
Chi. Ossé.
Chi. I actually had a Nigerian friend named Chioma. Chi. Okay, I gotcha. So introduce yourself to this amazing panel and to the people who want to vote for you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chi Ossé, and I'm a 3rd-generation Brooklynite. I always begin with the borough because it's a cornerstone of my identity. I was raised in and by Brooklyn. My father worked in the music industry. My mother owns a bakery. My 2 grandmothers are lifelong workers and union members. I always mention my union grandmas when citing the origins of my current worldview. Both my grandmothers were hardworking women and proud members of their respective unions. One medical, one educational, and both dedicated to the essential work of defending essential workers. I am an organizer, born of working class roots and dedicated to working class growth. I grew up in a neighborhood that in many ways parallels the city as a whole, haves, have-nots, and folks moving up or down. The common thread is clear: economic power. The prosperous can thank stability. The struggling have no stable platform on which to stand. Those on their way down are losing grasp of their economic power, and those on their way up are organizing. The strongest power, the most just moral power, is solidarity, the power of working together. These are the lessons passed down from my grandmothers and fortified on my block. These are the lessons that pushed me to the stage in front of crowds of thousands during the height of summer protests and to coordinate mutual aid programs as the cold set in and the crowds thinned. I still lead, I still march, because I recognize injustice and demand its dismantling. But I'm called to legislating in order to institutionalize bold visions, to protect those in need, and to empower them. Who I am is a product of my community and family, streets and schools. Grateful for all I have, aware of what was denied to me for race, and confident in what we can all achieve through the power of a united people. I'm an optimist and a pragmatic progressive, and I'm ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chi. Mr. Walker.
Good evening. Thank you all for inviting me to this space. It's really an honor to be here and to be here with my amazing panelists in AfroSoc. My name is Jason Walker, and I'm running to represent the people of Bed Stuy, Weeksville, North Crown Heights, and become the next city council elected official. I've been a grassroots community organizer in this city for the past 8 years, building strong political power, taking folks up to Albany and to City Hall to pass progressive legislation that positively impact folks who sleep in our shelters, folks who've been impacted by drug policies, bad, harmful drug policies, the war on drugs, and mass incarceration. I'm someone who just doesn't organize with these communities, I organize as these communities. As someone who was displaced by Hurricane Sandy and had to sleep in our shelter system, to relying on our city vouchers program for housing, to then transforming those experiences to actually organizing side by side folks in our community to make sure that we can end homelessness in our communities. I have family members who have been impacted by the war on drugs, and I too have also experienced the hardships of addictions. I'm someone who's intimately connected and tied to these struggles that are found within our communities. And I know exactly what it takes to win bold progressive policies alongside folks who are directly impacted by political and economic harms in order to pass strong, bold, courageous, progressive public policy for Black lives.
Thank you. Now, these answers, because we want transparency, we want them answered. The first question we're going to have is about defunding the police. And this is a very specific question because The people who are electing you need to know your stance once you actually take office. So the first question, Chi, it's going to go to you. So it's going to be alternating because it's the two of you. So Jason will speak, Chi will speak, and we'll just keep it going like that. Chi, by how much would you support cutting the NYPD's budget? By 1 billion, 3 billion? And what have you organized around defunding of the police?
Thank you for your question. So by the end of my first year in office, so at the end of 2022, I would hope that the city council will defund at least $1 billion from the NYPD. Defunding to me means reimagining and divesting from bloated police budgets to reinvest in programs and agencies to reduce over-policing and actually help our communities. Most people are not as well versed in the lingo of the movement. The word defund scares a lot of people. It scares many Black people in the district. I'm running to divest from the NYPD and reinvest that capital into our communities. We also can't talk about defund or divest without addressing the gun violence that plagued our streets this summer. Our public safety system has been failing us for decades. We need a serious reimagining of how public safety and law enforcement operates, especially in District 36. As someone that was protesting on the streets nearly every single day this summer and organizing with people on the ground, we were demanding for a defunding of the NYPD. But with that defunding, we need to reinvest within our communities. We called our local electeds. That's why I jumped into this race, because our local electeds, or my current local elected, did not listen to the demands of protesters as well as the community at hand. And that's why I stepped into this race, to make that real change so that we can actually deduct and divest from that budget and reinvest back into our communities, whether it's public education, whether it's public housing, whether it's community-based organizations that are actually doing the work. But that's where the money needs to go, and that's what I'm running to do.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, do you need me to repeat the question, or you got it?
I got it.
No problem.
I agree a lot with what Ossé said. One of the things that we saw last session was not a real divestment, right? It was a reallocation and shifting into policing infrastructures that exist in other places. I will advocate for a true and honest divestment of $1 billion from policing and invest those in strong community-based organizations that do the work to interrupt violence in our communities. So that's like SOS, Save Our Streets in Bed Stuy and in North Crown Heights. That's the Holler programs, the folks that are in the community, building real relationship with our members with our community folks on the ground to make sure that we can have a healthy and strong and safe communities. In the past, what I have done to help support ending police violence and divesting from police is I helped to organize around ending broken windows policing theories. I was out there on the ground when Eric Gardner got arrested for selling loose cigarettes, right? These are broken window policies and policing tactics that we are paying for, that we need to one, divest and reinvest in communities to keep each other safe and promote economic stability and support. So I'm someone, furthermore, my past work has also looked like helping to start the Occupy City Hall movement. We was out there with Vocal New York and other organizations, holding the space to make sure that we made our demands clear and known, that we want a $1 billion divestment and investment in our communities. We did not get that. That money went into other mechanisms to help support police states.
Thank you. Next question. Chi, do you oppose the borough-based jails plan, and will you support the immediate closure of Rikers Island without new jails?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for your question. I absolutely oppose that plan. No new jails, no more new jails, but we do need to work towards closing Rikers. Law enforcement changes, defund and closing jails must include economic and housing plans. Are we just talking for social media likes? We need to talk about enforcing trade skill training for those that are in Rikers so that we can enforce transitional housing, so that we can get people that commit nonviolent crimes to get out of Rikers so that we can close Rikers. I also support turning Rikers into a water treatment center. But if we are going to close Rikers, we need to put forth legislation that would include transitional housing, trade skills training, optimizing temporary vouchers to permanent use for stable homes, workshop and union apprenticeship training, legislating police to pursue criminals, not quotas, or criminalizing of people. Borough-based jails can't be situated only in challenged communities. That is a typical move. Always the move to devalue our communities and serve affluent neighborhoods. And the borough-based jails have to engage or be created without the bully culture of our corrections. So I oppose the new jails, and I also support the closing of Rikers. I do understand that it will take us some time to get there, but I think we can do it when we have a coalition of like-minded individuals like myself in the city council come January of 2022. But again, if we are going to close Rikers, we need to invest and make out a plan for the transitional housing and trade programs that we'll have for nonviolent offenders, as well as people that have spent their time.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, the same question. Do you oppose the borough-based jails plan, and will you support the immediate closure of Rikers Island without any new jails?
Totally. Definitely have organized to close down Rikers, have stood alongside folks who've been informally incarcerated by Rikers. So Rikers gotta go. And we definitely don't need to build any more new jails. We need to transcend this concept of incarceration and policing. We need to invest in like new innovative ideas around what does community justice look like. We have seen in Red Hook, there's community models of like, what does justice look like to keep folks out of our prison system. We need to have one in Bed-Stuy. We need to have something like that in Brownsville. We need to have some like community justice center where we can help hold each other accountable as community, but do it in a way that keeps us safe from prisons, but are able to make sure we can reinvent and usher in a transformative, restorative process of justice, right? Things happen in our community. We gotta be real about that, right? There's definitely harm that happens in our community that we do towards each other, but we need to create the systems to make sure we keep each other safe and healthy and restore each other. And that money that we can use to rebuild jails, we need to invest it in new innovative models that actually are restorative and just to Black folks. We need to be able to recreate and invent those, and we can do that together. There's definitely great work that's happening on a national level. We need to talk about that and be a part of that conversation and help to usher and pioneer that right here in Bed-Stuy.
Thank you. The next question. Should public schools have police officers, sometimes called school safety officers, on their premises? Chief.
Excuse my language, but hell no, get them out of the goddamn schools. That is a part of the school to prison pipeline. The city council must divest from supporting the bloated and inflated budgets of the NYPD. I have noted this time and time again that moving monies from overtime expenses as well as police and schools would help save the Department of Education's counseling and co-curricular programming. And I think the amount was close to $800 million. Plus, why does the largest police force in America rely heavily on overtime, as well as policing our students in public schools? This money can be used to stop crime at one of its sources, subpar education. The NYPD is full of contracts that need to be reviewed, like ShotSpotter, a system that is spotty. ShotSpotter has cost the city about like $5.6 million a year. We need to remove unnecessary contracts from any and all departments and reinvest in schools and other vital social programs for growth. When we see police in schools, I think we're ignoring the issue that we need to fund our schools and stop policing our children. I mean, we need to look at the NYPD's practices like deployment and shed the inefficiencies from where they lie. An inefficiency from the NYPD is having police patrol our students when they're just trying to learn.
Thank you. And just so it'll be fair and you guys will have a chance to each answer the question first. Mr. Walker, after you answer this question, I'm going to follow up question 4 with you. So it'll be fair, okay? But just to repeat the question that we're currently answering, should public schools have police officers, sometimes called school safety officers?
We don't need police, we need community, right? We need to take that money away from policing in our schools and make sure we have money for caseworkers, social workers, counseling services, extracurricular school activities, making sure that we have even before school activities. We need to invest in community. That's the way we can help keep students safe. That's how we can help make sure that we have an education system where children can go to school and thrive and feel safe and secure. We need to invest in community, not in strengthening police infrastructure, and really address the issues that create violence within our school systems, right? We can't necessarily ignore it. We have to talk about those as well. So yeah.
Thank you. Well, I hope you're ready, just so it'll be fair. You'll have a chance to answer question first. I'm going to read the next question to you. So you're going to be answering back to back, okay?
Yep.
The next question. Do you support the expansion of charter schools?
So I'm gonna be honest. I went to a charter school. I graduated from a charter school. My charter school was one that was ran by community. It wasn't ran by corporations or like rich folks. It was raised by folks who wanted to provide an Afrocentric community for inner city Black kids. But I understand that the struggles and challenges in New York City relating to public schools is actually taking money away from the public school system. So with that, I cannot accept the way in which charter schools have shown up and have really done a disservice to our public school system. We need to ensure that we have a public school system that works well for all our students. The reason why my charter school was created was because our public school system failed, but community did not want that to like be the challenge that we dealt with as students. But now as someone who's running for a position in power, right, I want to do everything I can to ensure that we have a public school education system that truly works for all of our students.
Thank you. Chi, do you support the expansion of charter schools?
Okay, my priority is getting more funding for the children who attend public schools. We need to provide fair and equitable funding. Charter schools should be an asset, but not the final solution for parents. This is another call for equitable assets, funding, and resources. I'm all for maintaining charter school caps. Having new schools with specific education goals is great and also positive, but expanding and having the schools be private for-profit entities, that's a no and doesn't really bode well with me. Which brings me, and I guess everyone, to the important question of transparency, space, saturation, etc. Charter schools cannot become the primary source of education in New York City. They can't. They're not designed to support all students. They are true examples of a two-tiered system masquerading as progress. Loudly, I am for caps on the number of charter schools, on the transparent reports and reviews of discipline and acceptance rate, better yet policies, better use of space with public and charter schools to make sure the students win. And also accountability. It must be used to when talking about hiring practices. School culture, teacher grievances, non-union situations concern me, as I have gotten some sketchy reports, external funds, private ownership, philosophies, and the makeup of the governing entities. Listen, I'm not anti-charter schools. They're here, our students attend them, and many graduate from them. What I am against is how often our public schools are left behind in terms of funding. As a council member, I will never leave our public schools behind.
Thank you. And Chi, the next question. Do you support SH, SAT, school screenings, and gifted and talented programs?
Whew. Okay, listen, we can't tackle the mammoth issue of school integration in a few minutes, but I will say that we need to abolish school screenings and we need to abolish the historically racist SH-SAT, but we must fully fund our New York City public schools. Like in my last answer, we can't put Band-Aids on these problems with charter schools as well as these screenings and SH-SAT tests. Many of our Black and brown students in this district can't afford the tutors to study for those tests. So I think one, we need to de-emphasize the use of those tests and move on our way to abolish the importance and the necessity of the SH-SAT.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, do you support the SH-SAT, school screenings, gifted and talented programs?
I do not support those programs. I know those programs are historically racist. As a kid, I was tested as talented and gifted and was separated from my twin brother. And we were in two different classes. His class was definitely treated differently than my class. So I seen the systemic racism in those practices. I would do everything I can to ensure that we abolish those and end those because I know how they hurt and harm our communities.
Thank you. Jason, would you support a primary challenger to Andrew Cuomo from the left?
Yes. Yeah.
It's just a yes? You're not even going to utilize the time?
Yes. I mean, as someone who has brought folks up to Albany for years and have seen how awful he is, right? And just to see how, like, when we have put how strategic he is in ensuring that he looks like a strong progressive, when in fact behind closed doors, you know that he's not. When I've been up there in Albany and had those conversations with politicians and elected officials, I know that this guy is not truly for the people. He can show up as a shining star, when the cameras are on New York. But when it really comes down to actually doing the work for the most vulnerable among us, it's definitely a fight. And we definitely need someone to challenge him. And even without that, I'm definitely someone who is always ready to challenge and fight Governor Cuomo.
Chi, the same question applies to you. Will you support a challenger?
Get him out of here. Get him out of here. Cuomo needs to go. And also, just to put this out there, if Cuomo does not tax the rich, and we do have a supermajority of Democrats in the state Senate and Assembly, this man needs to go. Our city is hurting. Our state is hurting. Our most vulnerable are hurting. And it's due to some of Cuomo's many mistakes. Now we have an opportunity to elect a progressive city council that will call onto our supermajority in the state Senate and Assembly to make real changes, to tax the rich, to invest in our communities, and help us all get through this pandemic and these struggling times. If Cuomo's not on board, which of course he won't be, we need to get him out of here. No matter what, we need to primary Cuomo.
Yeah, so from both candidates, no mincing of words when it comes to Governor Cuomo. So we're going to move on to the next question. This one's going to be for you, Mr. Walker. Would you accept all expenses paid trips to Israel as an elected official?
No. In fact, I thought about this a lot. And what I would do with that funding is actually go to places that have also experiencing issues in policing. So in Brazil, there's a rising movement against police violence that are happening there. I would use that money to even go to Palestine and help to organize folks in that area. Definitely not using that money to support the Zionist state of Israel.
Thank you. Chi.
No, I would not accept that trip to go to Israel. My work will be here in District 36, helping my neighbors, helping my community in the neighborhood that I grew up in. There's no place for me to go to Israel. I am in support of a two-state solution over there, but my work is here in New York City. Our neighborhoods in District 36 are being over-policed. I'm running to help a community that I grew up in, a borough that I'm a native to fight for my people here. So I would not go to Israel.
Thank you.
I would not accept the trip to go to Israel.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Chi, do you oppose the privatization of NYCHA via RAD?
Sorry, I didn't know I was muted. Absolutely. I do not advocate private ownership of private housing. We must amend, fix, and maintain the units, invite private care and maintenance for vital operations, but not ownership. I'm running to empower tenant associations to conference meet, and it could create a strong resident housing board that serves the NYCHA communities. There should be a strong accountability measures introduced for everyone who speaks on behalf of residents. As someone that is doing constituent services nearly every single day in this community, I'm talking to tenant association presidents left and right. For example, Adorn DeBose, the tenant association president at Sumner Houses, her and I have had a discussion about the privatization of NYCHA, as well as RAD and its existence, and she is not on board with that. As a city council member, I always say that this is a co-governing experience. When I step into office, everyone that elects me, and even those that have not, will step into that room with me. NYCHA and those tenant association presidents will have a seat at the table to help me govern, because their experience is different than mine, but I'm fighting for them because they are my people.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Mr. Walker, do you oppose the privatization of NYCHA via RAD?
Totally. We shouldn't privatize it. To handle the issue, privatization only comes into existence when government fails, right? When when government doesn't do its job, right? We need to ensure that government does its job. The government needs to ensure that they do right by the people of NYCHA. That means making sure that we invest fully in restoring NYCHA, getting the renovations that they so desperately need and deserve. So I would do everything I can to fight for actual investment in NYCHA and ensure that we repair the damages that has been done to NYCHA due to years of racism, due to years of negligent racism.
Thank you so much. Mr. Walker, did you oppose Amazon coming to Queens, the industry city rezoning, or the Flushing rezoning? And if you opposed any of these things, please let us know why or why not.
Not only I opposed, I actually went into Amazon and helped organize and shut it down. When we went to the Amazon bookstore, and we went there with NYCC, and we shut it down and said, like, no, we do not want Amazon in New York City. I'm definitely someone who opposes big corporations coming into our city. So yes, I will continue to always stand against that.
Thank you. And did you participate in any actions for industry city rezoning or the Flushing rezoning?
No, I did not attend any.
Okay, thank you so much. And Chi, the same question goes to you. Did you oppose Amazon coming to Queens? The
Absolutely.
industry.
Sorry.
Okay, I just want to finish the question and make sure you hear the other parts if you participated in them. The industry city rezoning and the Flushing rezoning.
Absolutely. I oppose and continue to oppose the Amazon rezoning here in Queens. And I know they're trying to do it again in East New York. And I heavily oppose that, especially since they don't have a council member there. They're trying to seize the opportunity to come and swoop in again. This is not what New York City needs. That's why I have a proposal to both reform and reimagine ULURP. And to your other question about Industry City and Flushing, I wrote a letter and had it signed with a couple other city candidates that I sent to both city council candidates that I sent to both my council member as well as 6 other council members, demanding them to vote no on the Flushing rezoning. I've spoken out against the rezoning of Flushing because I understand that right now housing is healthcare, and these greedy developments are trying to swoop in and displace people. And we can't have people be displaced, not even during a pandemic, but prior to a pandemic and after a pandemic. Again, housing is healthcare, and these developers are trying to take that opportunity at hand to push people out of their neighborhoods for their own corporate interests.
Thank you. And Chi, this question is just going to go to you. Do you support the full decriminalization of sex work, fare evasion, or drug possession? And if so, please tell us why.
Am I muted? Oh, no, I'm not.
No, we hear you.
Awesome. Well, I do support the decriminalization of sex work, and I think it would be a huge step for our criminal justice system. The current statutes exacerbate criminality and create health issues, especially for our trans women of color. Once decriminalized, we will institute measures to protect and educate our citizens. Protections for sex workers will benefit all women of color. I also do support the decriminalization of marijuana because it criminalizes our Black and brown men. I also support when we do decriminalize marijuana, that those that are imprisoned for marijuana carrying offenses be released from prison. And I think your last question of decriminalization was fare evasion. Absolutely. I support all public transportation to be free. I think that's a step that we need to move towards as a municipal government, to fight for the MTA to be free across the city, whether it's buses or the trains. Police have stopped me for hopping over a turnstile, as well as swiping through when I used my student Metro card when I was a young teenager here. But I do support ending criminalization or decriminalization of fare evasion, decriminalization of marijuana, and decriminalization of sex work.
Thank you. Jason, this is our final question, and then we're going to move on to questions from the residents of District 36. But our final question from the members of AfroSoc are, do you support cannabis? And what actions do you take to ensure cannabis justice? This is for Mr. Walker.
Yeah, I support cannabis. Definitely. And for me, cannabis justice means looking like full decriminalization, expunging of records of folks who have been incarcerated by cannabis, and ensuring a pathway to the industry for folks who are a part of who sell drugs, right? Ain't no way around it saying it, right? We need to ensure that like the people in our community who are out here like selling drugs, selling marijuana, can actually be a part of the industry. And do it in a way and have the access to all those things, right? So I want to make sure that folks, I have family members who sell weed, right? I have folks in my community that sell weed, right? So we need to make sure that like, one, we have a pathway to the industry. We need to have a just pathway into the industry. A number one fear and concern is that when New York legalized, because Cuomo's now talking about legalization, does that actually lock out folks in our community? Is it going to be pulling more people from outside of our communities to actually monopolize and capitalize off this industry? We need to make sure that folks in our community are able to like participate in this industry and do it in a way that actually does not strengthen our historically racist capitalistic infrastructure. So we need to like, yes, definitely. And the way to do that is talking to folks in the community who sell drugs and be like, hey, how can we help make sure you get into this trade and this business? We have to have real conversations with folks in our community who are out here trapping, who are out here like selling drugs, and make sure that like we could get folks in our community to like be engaged in a growing, robust green industry. That's the green.
I actually like that term. I'm going to start calling it the green industry.
Yeah.
Now, these set of questions are most important to me. These questions are all from residents of District 36. These are from your friends, your neighbors, and the people that you're going to City Hall to work hard for. And most importantly to remember, these are the people that you owe. These are the people who you work for. These are the people that you're going to go to City Hall every single day. Even on the tough days, even when it rains and pours, these are the people you are going to represent. So, Chief, the first question is going to go to you. What will you do to support the tenants' rights movement in District 36? Do you support the cancellation of rent?
I definitely support the cancellation of rent and also the cancellation of mortgages for mom and pop homeowners. During this campaign, I continue to support residents, NYCHA and private, to acquire rent relief through social media and constituent services, translated in both English and Spanish. You can check out my website. We have materials on there for that, both translated in English and Spanish, as well as an animation that I did drop today. Through our constituent services prior to stepping into office, we have reached over 3,000 tenants in our neighborhood. 50 plus have been engaged with the link, and 6 persons have been counseled by Team Ossé, my team. And also, as I said before, we can't really talk about gentrification without addressing our past city council members, predatory realtors, predatory developers, and predatory landlords. We also can't talk about gentrification without addressing the dire need for the reimagining of ULURP. ULURP, if anyone is listening, is the Uniform Land Use Review Procedure. In my plan, I'm running to reimagine ULURP, and the reimagining of it is in twofold. How can we make the current process work for the community, and how can we better the process? Right now, as it is, with the council members that we have in this district that take money from real estate developers are signing off this land, displacing people in this district, increasing property taxes, increasing rent prices for individuals, which kicks people out of our neighborhoods. Many people see gentrification as being white and black and newcomers in the neighborhood, but I don't believe in trickle-down economics, but I do believe in trickle-down gentrification, and it starts with our council members. With the future of ULURP and the reimagining of ULURP, I need to make sure that I push the charter to review on how the planning and BSA interrupt democratic rule. We need to give the community board more teeth, and there must always be racial impact studies whenever development is presenting to be built, because the developers will come in, they will increase rent prices, they will kick out people that have been here for years, and they will kick out renters and tenants that are struggling to make ends meet. And I don't know if I said this before, but I am in support of canceling rent and canceling mortgages for mom and pop homeowners.
Thank you so much. And Jason, I'm not sure, do you need me to repeat that question for you? But I will. Do you support the tenants' rights movement in District 36? And do you support the cancellation of rent? Yeah,
definitely support the cancellation of rent. I just received a message from my landlord said, I'm not gonna say how much, but I'm behind on my rent. And I make light of it, but it's a serious issue. It's impacting thousands of New Yorkers, and there's not a clear pathway out without actually clear canceling of rent. Yes, the city has these mechanisms for one-shot deals, but oftentimes folks gotta pay those back, and not everyone's gonna be eligible for them. The only way to get this done is by making sure we tax the rich, defund the NYPD, to ensure that we can cancel rent. We have to provide immediate rent relief for folks because this is a crisis, right? And I want to be also clear that this isn't just a crisis that is new, right? This is something that is systemic. Folks have always been Black and brown folks, low-income folks, folks who are always, so there's communities who have always been on the brink of homelessness, and that's true for folks in District 36. So definitely I'm someone who wants to support the canceling of rent and also creating pathways to ensure that folks do not find themselves in these situations again. And there's definitely ways we can do that. We could look at the ways in which the HIV/AIDS movement has created HASA agency to ensure that folks can have ongoing rental support and relief. So there's ways that we can reinvent other mechanisms to ensure that folks have ongoing rent support, to ensure that folks pay no more than 30% of their income towards their rent, so we could ensure a real and maintain affordable housing. So yes, I'm definitely someone who is not only supportive of the tenants, I am the tenant that is also behind on their rent, and do everything I can to ensure that we can cancel rent and provide ongoing permanent support for tenants in New York.
It looks like Chivona may have been disconnected. Oh, there she is.
My Zoom decided to update in the middle of a whole panel. My apologies to the to Jamila. I see you jumping in to have the sisters back, but how does Zoom restart and re-update in the middle of a panel? Only me. So let's go back to the question. Thank you, gentlemen, for the questions. And I believe we were moving on to second question from the community residents. How will you bring new housing supplies to our district that is truly affordable for working people and not just for a minuscule giveaway from the mega profitable developers?
Who's that question to?
You answered the question last, I believe, before I got kicked off of the internet land. So yeah, it will start with you. It's kind of like back-to-back question to question, so it'll be fair for you guys. So Jason, you can start with that one.
And apologies, one more time. Can you repeat the question?
I will, and I'll say it slow. I know that little boot kickoff threw everything into a frenzy, and we're having an amazing debate. I'm enjoying you gentlemen's answers. So the second question, this is from community residents. How will you bring new housing supply to our district that is truly affordable for working people and not just a minuscule giveaway from the mega profitable developers?
Yeah, so, public land has to be for the public good. We have to ensure that all housing stock that is going to be created in our district actually meets low income and median income and AMI. So that's one thing. We need to ensure that the housing that is created actually meets the people who actually live in the district. Another very important thing is that, like, about District 36 is there is a large number of homeless shelters in our district. A lot of folks who are currently sleeping in the shelter system. One of the easy pathways out into homelessness is by ensuring that we have a voucher system that actually truly works. Currently, our voucher system does not meet fair market. It is subpar and substandard. We pay so much more to house folks in shelter, but not invest enough to the voucher programs to create housing programs to keep folks into affordable housing. So one of the things I want to make sure that we do is that we can actually transition into real affordable housing by also strengthening our voucher system. And also by making sure that we shift from having a livable wage to a thrivable wage. We need to increase up to $25 an hour, period, right? We need to make sure that those things happen in our city to ensure that folks are able to afford and maintain housing in our city.
Thank you. And Chi, that same question goes to you. How are you going to bring about new housing supplies to your district, which is truly affordable for working people and not just a minuscule giveaway from the mega profitable developers?
Thank you for your question. I will like to note our house list first. I understand we need to increase affordability. We also need to upgrade and reform our shelters. This includes job training and transitional housing, especially for our houseless families and our LGBTQ youth. I would like to boost funds for both the Brooklyn Community Pride Center and the Ali Forney Center. And I also absolutely will support a homes guarantee program. When I am approached with a residential deal, if I'm a developer and I will have to undergo the ULURP process, developers must have a plan for affordable housing that does not solely rely on the flawed AMI, but considers the local economy's model annual income sets. Also, we can't really change the AMI unless we call on the federal government to do something about it. If that won't be the case, we need to de-emphasize the sole use of AMI. Other examples include local calculations, AMI in the specific area, and also something that I've been using to calculate that I will be going into office with is according to MIT's living wage calculator. It's something that we can use to figure out living wages of this district so that we can actually calculate a real AMI so that real affordable housing is being built in our neighborhoods. And I also believe that housing that already exists in this neighborhood needs to be expanded and be affordable for everyone, not just new developments. And then I'm also a huge supporter and fighter for expanding rent stabilization in this district and hopefully the rest of the city.
Thank you. And the next question is, and this is going to go to you, Chi. Do you support non-citizens voting?
Yes, they are a part of our society. They're taxpayers and they should definitely be able to vote in our elections.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, do you support non-citizens voting?
Of course. If non-citizens are impacted by public policy, So they should definitely have a voice in actually who creates it.
Thank you. Okay, and this 4, I like this one. This is personal. Your future constituents, they want to know who you are. Of course, we all have these amazing platforms to stand on, but let's tell the people who you are. What skill sets and strengths are you bringing to represent your district? And Jason, we're going to start with you.
1, organizing and movement building. I've been organizing since I've been 15 years old. I started organizing in high school, making sure that high school debate tournaments had a meaningful space for Black folks to actually compete against like whiteness and white normativity there. That got me a scholarship to the University of Louisville, where I organized on campus, where I organized the Louisville for Trayvon chapter, which now became the Black Lives Matter chapter of Louisville, Kentucky. I've been an organizer consistently in making sure that we build strong political power for communities most impacted by violence and white supremacy. My organizing skill set is also about bringing folks together to actually push strong progressive public policy. I have one public policy on both state and city level, and I know exactly how politicians do their work, and I understand fully how we can organize politicians and other folks who electeds in other districts to actually win progressive public policy that has a direct impact on our most vulnerable New Yorkers. Many of those reside in District 36. My skill sets are about community organizing, community building, policy advocacy, and really a heart towards the struggle. As someone who's actually someone who has lived in our shelter system, as someone who has been through police violence and has stood alongside folks who have been incarcerated and victimized by our policing system. So I'm someone who has a lot of skill sets, but my skill sets really come from my experiences as someone who had to fight against these issues because I know that my life depended on it.
Thank you. Mr. Ossé, how do you feel about this? Who are you? That's what the true question is. What skill sets and strengths are you bringing to represent your district?
Thank you for your question. I'm a native Brooklynite. You know, we need a native Brooklynite of Central Brooklyn to lead our district forward. I grew up in Brooklyn. I've seen this neighborhood change throughout my time as I grew up here, for better and for worse. Whenever I would question why our public schools were underfunded, why our public housing was underfunded, why our sanitation department's underfunded, why our healthcare systems are underfunded, I finally realized that our local electeds are the ones to blame. You know, we live in the wealthiest city in America. And when you hear that there's not enough money for our district in my neighborhood that I grew up in, that's wrong. It's our electeds that aren't leading this neighborhood in the right direction. You know, I've protested nearly every day this summer and founded an activist nonprofit called Warriors in the Garden. After our week of founding, we were putting together marches, protests, children's marches, and educational sessions, teaching people about what race relations meant in this country. Now we are working with mutual aid programs, and we're putting food on people's tables, and we're putting coats on people's backs. The messaging behind my campaign is Black Lives Matter. And many people see that only in the sense of law enforcement killing Black and brown men and women. But that is not true. As someone that grew up in this neighborhood, I know that we are redlined in a district where our people grow up in underfunded public housing, where there's mold and roaches, where they live in a neighborhood where we are in a food desert. So in a sense, Black people in District 36 are put in an environment where we are dying from the second we wake up to the second we go to bed. And I've lived through this experience. My father, may he rest in peace, 3 years ago passed away at the young age of 53 because of how failing and racist this healthcare system in America is to our Black people. My mother, seeing her struggle and survive as a single mother and keep her business open throughout this pandemic has given me strength as well. I am running because my experience in life has brought me to this point. I grew up in this borough. I am what I am, and I'm ready to lead.
Thank you. Next question. We're going to start with you, Jace. Hold on, we're going to start with you, Chi. So it'll be fair. Everyone gets their shot at answering first. Are you a member of DSA? Do you identify as a democratic socialist? Why or why not?
I am a member of the DSA. I am a dues-paying member. Y'all take $15 a month out of my bank account. And I do identify as a democratic socialist. To me, socialism refers to a political, social, and economic ideology that posits collectivist struggle as a top priority of a government, essentially governing bodies viewing society in a more holistic manner rather than the sum of its parts. To me, socialism means true democracy, which is why I like to use the term democratic socialist to describe myself. A true democracy respects each individual's voices, values, and needs, and then follows through by implementing effective programs based on those voices, values, and needs. This follow through would include an access-capable social safety net, stable infrastructure, and equal representation. As I said before, this is my mission as an activist and future public advocate.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, are you a member of DSA? Do you identify as a democratic socialist? Why or why not?
Yes, I'm a member of DSA, and I contribute to DSA because we share the same values about how we want our country to be. I identify as a Pan-Africanist. I understood socialism through that context. So yes, for a while it took me I struggled with the DSA because honestly it was a majority white space, and that's why I'm so thankful for the AfroSoc space because it allows me an opportunity to reintegrate with my Pan-Africanism politics when it comes to Afro-socialism. So yes, I contribute to the organization. I'm someone who is invested in this movement. It is a global movement. It is a movement that our people have been like fighting for and towards for generation to year. So yes, I'm a proud member of DSA. I am someone who contributes monthly to the institution and the organization and to our vision of creating a socialist America, one that is liberatory to Black folks.
Thank you. And this is actually the final question. This ran pretty smooth, even with me getting like kicked off into internet land. So Jason, you're going to take on the last question. And that is, do you have plans to address the homelessness crisis within your district?
Yes. I'm a formerly homeless New Yorker, right? I'm someone who lived in the shelters, was displaced by Sandy, lived in the community and moved around. So I understand very intimately the experience of displacement and moving around because of struggle. Yes, we have to end homelessness. It is a crisis and is an ongoing issue that has been going on for decades. It is time to end it. We need a strong, progressive, we need a strong candidate who's able to tackle these issues, who knows how to build community among homeless folks, to actually win strong public policy, to actually alleviate and resolve this issue. It has been happening for far too long. So yes, I would definitely not only win on this issue, I will organize intimately and powerfully around it.
Mr. Ossé, the same question goes to you. Do you have plans to address the homelessness crisis within your district?
Absolutely. Our houseless population is our most vulnerable population in our society. When we fight and when we win and tax the rich, we need to reinvest into our most vulnerable people. We need to expand and reform our houseless shelters. We need to invest in transitional housing. We need to invest in teaching and providing trade and unions and jobs for our houseless population of Central Brooklyn and across the city. When we divest from the NYPD, a portion of the NYPD's budget that goes to the NYPD to take care of the homeless will be reinvested into our houseless individuals here in District 36. I'm a fighter for houseless people. There is a houseless shelter on my block. I have fought for that to be there along with my block association to house people within my district right here on my corner. So I am a fighter for the houseless population here in this district. I will fight and organize, as Jason said, to tax the rich and reinvest into our most vulnerable populations here in New York City.
Thank you. Now it's time for the closeout. This is where you use this amazing platform that AfroSoc has given us. Why should people vote for you? Why should people come out and canvass for you? Like, really, from the heart, why are you running for office? So please, gentlemen, use your closeout wisely. And we all look forward to hearing your answers. Okay. So who answered the last question? I'm sorry, I got a little sidetracked. They're keeping me on track between chats and text messages. Chi, you went first the last time? Okie dokie. Jason, I'll let you go first to give your closeout.
Thank you all for this amazing space and this opportunity to speak with you all. I'm running because I'm struggling, right? I'm running because honestly, I've been committed to organizing in the city for 7-8 years, been building strong political power to actually tackle some of the hardest issues that have impacted Black and brown communities: mass incarceration, addiction, drug violence, homelessness, in the HIV/AIDS pandemic. And I'm someone who's not just organized because of these issues. I organize because I've been impacted by all those issues. I know what it takes, and I know what's at line, and I know what's at stake in our communities. Folks should vote for me, but more importantly, advocate and canvas with me, because this is actually what's going to take for us to win. We need strong public policy that comes from a place of informed experience. Public policy that comes from informed organizing, someone who can organize with communities, as someone who is also intimately a part of these communities. The only way we could able to win public policies to support the most vulnerable New Yorkers is by making sure that we have a candidate who actually is a vulnerable New Yorker. And this is definitely an experience that I share. It's definitely been my life work and commitment to actually advance public policy that are just and equitable and restorative and transformative to Black and brown communities.
Thank you. And Chi, last but definitely not least, please give us your closing statement.
Our city is at an inflection point. New national leadership, widespread leftist energy, and an unprecedented number of incumbents leaving our city council gives us a window of opportunity. The true progressive left in New York has spent years watching marginal improvements masquerading as seismic gains, all while the tidal strength of Black voters and organizers has too often been taken for granted. We can change that. The New York City Council is an institution of remarkable importance, the local legislator with the largest constituency in the country. It melds the relatable, personal, local politics with an importance comparable to state government. Council members represent almost 200,000 constituents and take the subway to work each day. They are not sent off for half the year to represent their neighbors in a far-off capital. They govern right at home, my home, our home. The City Council embodies the democratic ideal of the citizen legislator. Serving and fighting for my community has placed me at the heart of movement energy. Bringing that to the council, I would be a bridge and a bond, both representing the people and working closely with them. I'm running for the seat to unlock our potential, the Black progressive, who has had their eyes trained on a brighter future just over the horizon, has for far too long been told not yet. I'm running to say no longer. We will write our own liberation. That horizon is within reach. Thank you all for everyone who has put me in this movement and for the movement to be here today. I hope we can fight and win together. Thank you.
Thank you. AfroSoc, I would like to thank you for putting on this amazing forum. To all of the candidates who participated, thank you for putting yourself on the line. It is a big jump to run for office, but I hope that you're all doing it for the right reasons. Now, this message is for the residents. It's for the people who live in District 36. It's time for you not to be bamboozled. It's time for you to do your research. It's time for you to know that you are sending someone to office who is going to represent you, someone who is unapologetic, someone who is unbossed, someone who is going to stand up and speak truth to power. You know that you live in a food desert. You know that you live in poverty. You know that you have been systemically oppressed and live under the tyranny of white supremacy. Now, when you go through these candidates' platforms, when you meet them, when you shake their hand, when you follow up and you ask them questions, you need to go to the polls in June knowing that you are voting for someone who is speaking on your behalf. Because what people forget is that politicians, they work for you. They are not celebrities. You pay their salary. You put them into office. You need to hold them accountable. And if by slim chance you do elect the wrong person to office, do not be afraid to remove them next roundabout. What I think that the people of color, specifically Black people, need to realize, with so many open seats, if we get people into office who support the issues that are important to us, we can control city council. That's what my org is doing. I know that AfroSoc for opening up this platform. We are all fighting for the full liberation of Black people, because we know that once Black people get their rights, immigrants get their rights, and all other marginalized people. And nothing happens for marginalized people unless there's legislation in place. Thank you all. Have a blessed night, safe travels, and have a good night's sleep. And thank you for having me as your moderator. And please, everyone, go out and vote. Our ancestors died for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.